They used to laugh at her. Every morning, before the first cup of coffee hit anyone's lips, she'd already be scrubbing the lobby floors, quietly, invisibly, like part of the furniture. No one knew her name. She never spoke unless spoken to. Just that hunched back, that gray mop bucket, and those scuffed white sneakers that squeaked against marble tiles. To everyone at Ledger Tech, she was just the janitor. Until the day she walked into the boardroom and fired the chief operating officer. Before we dive in, if this story moves you, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to keep the stories coming your way. Just a heads up, we don't just share stories here, we invite you to experience them. There's a little quiz at the end, just for fun. It's our way of saying thanks for watching closely and spotting the subtle moments others might miss. Be the first to answer. Don't let someone else steal your spotlight. The first time I noticed her, she was wiping down the elevator buttons with this little cloth that looked older than my last 3 relationships. She nodded at me and smiled. I didn't smile back. My name's Andrew. I work in data engineering, mid-level, forgettable. But what I saw that Tuesday morning changed everything. She wasn't wearing her usual janitor's polo. Instead, she had on a navy blue blazer, fitted, pressed, professional. And for the first time ever, she wasn't pushing her mop cart. She was holding a laptop. And she walked straight into the executive wing. We worked in Midtown, 37th floor, glass walls, pretentious art, and egos so large they could block the skyline. Ledger Tech was the kind of startup that called itself a disruptor, even though we still used Excel. The janitor, we only knew her as Ms. Eliza, had been around longer than anyone else. She never aged, never missed a day, but no one ever talked about her. She was like elevator music, always there, always ignored. That morning, after she stepped into the executive hallway, our Slack exploded. Why is the janitor in the boardroom? Did someone slip? LOL, what is happening? I peeked around the glass partition. Through the frosted glass, I could see Eliza, pacing. She had her arms crossed, listening intently. Then, and I swear I'm not exaggerating, the CTO stood up and nodded at her, like she was in charge. I blinked, and that's when I saw our CEO, Malcolm, standing off to the side, hands folded behind him like a subordinate. That couldn't be right. Half the office gathered near the conference room, pretending to refill coffee, trying not to get caught. No one dared enter. When they finally opened the doors, it was Eliza who walked out first. She didn't say a word. She just handed Malcolm a folder, turned on her heel, and left, heels clicking like a gavel down the hall. Within the hour, HR sent out a company-wide email. Effective immediately, COO Darren Marks is no longer with the company. We thank him for his service. We were stunned. Darren was untouchable. He wore designer suits to Zoom calls and fired interns for typos. But the janitor, Eliza, had just ended him. I couldn't let it go. I started asking around. No one knew where she came from. No LinkedIn, no backstory, and nothing. But then Jake, one of the IT guys, whispered something to me. Check the incorporation records. That night, I did. The name on the original founding documents, Eliza V. Cartwright. And suddenly, it all made sense. Eliza wasn't just a janitor. She was the invisible CEO, the founder who had deliberately disappeared from the public face of the company. Watching silently from the shadows, keeping an eye on everyone from a mop bucket's height. Every performance review, every water cooler whisper, every manager's tantrum. She had seen it all. And now that the company had reached a breaking point, she was done hiding. She came back to fix what she built. Quietly, completely, ruthlessly. I wish I could say things got better after that everyone stepped up, that the office became some beacon of equity and purpose. But it didn't. In fact, things got colder, more watched. The odd thing? Eliza didn't reclaim her throne, at least not officially. Her name never made it onto the internal staff directory. No press release, no interviews, no LinkedIn profile update. She went right back to pushing her mop cart. Only now, the silence had a different weight. Heavier, smarter, calculated. I started noticing how the directors would nod slightly when she passed, like they were checking in without words. How the head of product would glance up mid-meeting, just to see if she was within earshot. They never acknowledged her publicly, but their body language screamed one truth. She was running everything. About 2 weeks later, I stayed late to finish some dev work. It was past 10 p.m., and the office was down to a few glowing monitors and one half-eaten Caesar salad in the shared fridge. I had just pushed my final commit when I heard the elevator ding, softly, like a breath held in the dark. Out walked Eliza. No mop bucket this time. Just a worn leather messenger bag and those same white sneakers. She looked up, surprised to see me, and for the first time since I joined Ledger Tech, she spoke to me. "You're Andrew, right?" I blinked. Yeah. Yes, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am," she said with a grin, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her voice had that gravelly edge, like someone who smoked or swallowed secrets. She walked over and leaned on my desk. "You're one of the few who actually reads the codebase before talking." I didn't know what to say, so I nodded like a dumb puppy. She pulled out a folded piece of paper from her bag and laid it down in front of me. It was a printout of a query I'd written for a deprecated data stream, something we'd shelved months ago. "You know this was never supposed to go public, right?" she asked. I frowned. "It's not live. It's archived." Her eyes narrowed. "But it could be, and if it is, it unravels everything." That was the beginning of the shift. She didn't say what everything meant, but I knew. LedgerTech was sitting on a time bomb, a hidden system that tracked user metadata far more deeply than our privacy docs let on. I hadn't built it. I hadn't even known about it until I stumbled into some legacy scripts 6 weeks ago. But she knew. She knew because she'd built it. "Eliza," I started, but she raised her hand. "Don't ask," she said. "And don't go poking again unless you're ready to clean up blood, not just code." I swallowed hard. My heart was thudding so loud I thought it might echo across the open floor plan. Then she walked away. The next morning, HR sent out another email. Jake, the guy who told me about the incorporation records, was gone. Just gone. No warning, no goodbye lunch. His desk was cleared by noon. That afternoon, I checked Slack. All our private messages? Deleted. Every trace of our conversation about Eliza and the founder docs? Wiped clean. I knew what that meant. I wasn't just watched anymore. I was tagged. I kept my head down for the next few days, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. But paranoia has a smell, and it clung to everything like bleach. On Thursday, I stayed late again. Not to work, but to wait. I sat behind the frosted glass wall of the break room, lights off, pretending to nap. Around 9:45 p.m., I heard footsteps. Eliza. She walked to the same spot on the 37th floor, corner of the hallway by the executive wing. Then she did something I'll never forget. She took out a key, a tiny brass one, slipped it into a panel hidden behind the hallway art, and opened a door I didn't know existed. Behind it, a narrow steel staircase. I waited until she was gone, heart racing, and crept up to it. The door had no handle from my side, no lock, just cold metal and the smell of old wiring. I pressed my palm against it and whispered her name. "Eliza." No answer. By Friday, I wasn't sleeping. I showed up to work earlier than her. Sat at my desk and kept replaying the moment she pulled that printout from her bag. Why me? That day, the leadership team canceled all meetings. Then security came up to install new biometric scanners at every door. People started whispering, "Are we merging? Are we going under? Is someone suing us?" But the silence from the top floor stayed unbroken, until Darren, The fired COO posted a cryptic tweet. She thinks she erased me, but the files are still out there and I'm not done. It exploded across our internal group chats, and within an hour, his account vanished. Gone. No trace. Even screenshots started disappearing from phones. That night, I got a Slack ping. No name, just a ghost account. HollowFrame_76. You're not crazy, Andrew, but you're not ready yet either. Watch the janitor closet camera feed. 3:17 a.m. My blood turned to ice. There was no janitor closet camera, at least not on our official security grid. But I remembered something. Jake had once said, "There are layers to this place. Ledger Tech isn't a company, it's a test." And now, it felt like I was failing it. That night, I didn't sleep. I logged into the back-end systems, digging through camera IPs, hunting for one labeled out of rotation, and I found it. Camera 312-B. Labeled, Utility Storage, South Wall. I tapped into the feed at exactly 3:17 a.m., and what I saw shattered everything I thought I knew. Eliza stood in the janitor's closet, surrounded by 5 monitors, each one showing real-time feeds from different companies, different offices. None of them were Ledger Tech. She wasn't just running one company, she was overseeing dozens. And on one of the screens, I saw myself, sitting at my desk, typing. Time-stamped, 20 minutes in the future. I sat frozen. That wasn't just surveillance, that was prediction. Simulation. I backed out of the system, pulled the Ethernet. Sat there in the dark, heart pounding. She wasn't cleaning up our mess. She was controlling it. And yet, on Monday morning, there she was again. Mop in hand, white sneakers squeaking across the floor, like nothing had happened. I looked at her, and for a second, I think she knew. Knew I'd seen too much, but she didn't blink. She just said, "Morning, Andrew." Like we were old friends, like nothing was unraveling, like I wasn't slowly realizing. Ledger Tech didn't have a janitor. It had a keeper. I told myself to forget what I saw, to go back to writing test scripts and keeping my head down. But once your mind opens to something bigger, something beneath the normal, it doesn't shut quietly. For the next few days, I tried acting like nothing had changed, but everything had. Meetings started feeling like rehearsals, like the decisions had already been made before we even sat down. Product sprints kept shifting without explanation, and managers who once bragged about their KPIs were suddenly quiet, like they were waiting for judgment. It wasn't paranoia anymore, it was structure. Invisible hands tugging strings above our heads, and I was starting to see where the strings were tied. A week passed before Eliza spoke to me again. This time, she didn't wait for darkness or an empty floor. She stopped me midday, right by the cafeteria. "You're not sleeping," she said softly, almost kindly. "That's not sustainable." I didn't answer, just stared at her. "You looked into camera 312-B, she added. "I know." Her tone wasn't accusatory, it was disappointed, like I'd opened a locked door too early in the film. "Eliza," I said, barely above a whisper. "What is this?" She didn't blink. "Do you want to build or destroy, Andrew?" That question haunted me, because I didn't know the answer. And maybe she already did. Later that day, I found a note on my desk, handwritten, folded once. It simply read, "Meet me in the freight elevator at 6:17 p.m. Bring nothing." I shouldn't have gone. I knew better. But at exactly 6:17 p.m., I stood by the freight elevator, palms sweaty, brain spinning. The doors opened, and there she was. No mop, no bag, just her. We rode down in silence, passing floors I didn't know existed. Then the doors opened into what looked like a storage facility. Dark concrete, rows of metal shelves, a few blinking machines in the corner. "This is the original data vault," Eliza said. Before cloud, before scaling, before we lost control. She walked me through aisles of hard drives, dusty monitors, unplugged cables like veins without blood. This is where ledger tech began, she added, stopping at a file cabinet. And where it almost ended. I waited, but she didn't explain. Just opened a drawer and handed me a folder. Inside were documents, all signed, names I recognized. Darren Marks, Malcolm Lee, and hers. Except, her signature wasn't Eliza Cartwright, it was Elizabeth V. Renner. I looked up. Your name's not Eliza? She shook her head. Not here, no. That folder changed everything. Inside were proposals to launch something called Spectre Core, an experimental ops framework built to optimize corporate behavior through environmental input. Not AI, not surveillance, conditioning. Ledger Tech hadn't grown by accident. It had been shaped, steered, and she had been at the center of it. The folder showed how each leadership hire was tested under stress simulations before ever joining, how board members were rotated based on internal loyalty indexes, how employee Slack chats were tagged and analyzed by a system far more advanced than anything we'd been told existed. She looked at me and said, "You're wondering if it's ethical. I'm wondering if it's real." She smiled, not warm, not cold, just tired. You'll stop wondering when you see what chaos looks like without it. I don't know why, but I asked, "Why janitor? Why hide?" She paused before answering. When you lead from the front, people perform. When you lead from the shadows, they reveal. I swallowed that slowly. She turned to leave, but added one more thing. You'll have to choose soon, Andrew. Everyone does. And neutrality won't save you. After that night, I couldn't concentrate. I started watching people closer, how quickly some left meetings, how others waited for someone else to speak first, always deferring, always hesitating. Ledger Tech was no longer a company. It was a machine, and each of us was a gear, turning under the illusion of choice. But something else began to haunt me. That signature. Elizabeth V. Renner. Why change it? I dug around. Public records, old academic papers, tech archives. Turns out, Elizabeth Renner had been a known name in early experimental systems architecture. Then she vanished in 2011 after a failed project labeled Parallax Root. Every source said she'd died in a lab fire. Clearly she hadn't. One night I stayed behind again, not to wait for her, but to sneak back into the freight elevator. I needed answers, and I was done waiting for permission. This time, I brought a portable scanner. My plan was to copy the documents in the vault, quietly, carefully. But when I got there, the vault was empty, completely cleared out. No shelves, no monitors, no files, just cold, echoing walls and a single folding chair in the middle of the room. On the chair sat an envelope. I picked it up. Inside, a photo, me, standing by the vault last week, taken from above. On the back of the photo, "I told you not to bring anything, E." I dropped the envelope and ran. Not literally, but emotionally, mentally, I bolted. I didn't go back the next day, or the one after. I called in sick, told them I had a stomach flu, which, ironically, wasn't a lie. I was sick, just not from food. But I knew the more I stayed away, the more suspicion I'd raise. So I returned on Friday, early, head down. When I got to my desk, something was off. My desktop background was changed, just black now. All my files were still there, untouched, except for one. A new folder, named Vigilant. Inside it, a single video, no title. I clicked it. The footage was grainy, security cam style. It showed Eliza sitting in the break room, alone, late at night. She was talking to someone off screen. I turned up the volume. "You're pushing him too fast," a male voice said. "He's further along than the last one," she replied, "but not ready." She looked directly at the camera then, as if through time, through lenses, and said, "None of them ever are." The screen went black. The next day, I walked past her in the hall. She was wiping the edge of a window. "Eliza," I said, and my voice cracked more than I wanted it to. She turned. "Yes, Andrew?" I searched her eyes for something, warmth, malice, regret, but found none of it. Just calculation. "I'm not like the others," I said. She tilted her head. "No," she said. "You're not." And then she walked away. That weekend, I sat in my apartment staring at the wall. Ledger Tech was a lab. I was a subject. And Eliza, or Elizabeth, or whatever her name truly was, wasn't running a company. She was running a pattern, and I was part of it. But the part I still didn't understand, the thing that clawed at my brain, was why she let me see so much. Was I a mistake? Or a successor? Monday came. When I stepped off the elevator, the entire floor was silent. No chatter, no typing, just tension. And in the center of the open space, a table, a chair, and an envelope. My name, printed neatly across the front. I opened it. Inside was a badge, platinum, embossed. Vigilant Ops, Level 1 access. Below it, "You're ready. We start watching from the inside now." And scribbled beneath that, in black ink, E. I always thought control looked like power suits, corner offices, and titles etched on glass doors. Turns out, control looks like silence, like a woman pushing a mop cart with a memory sharper than any algorithm. Like a system so quiet, you never know you're already inside it. People asked me later, "Why didn't you walk away? Why didn't you run when you had the chance?" But what they don't understand is, once you see the wires, the gears, the hands behind the curtain, you don't go back to being a spectator. You become part of the mechanism. Ledger Tech didn't change me, she did. Eliza, Elizabeth, whatever name she carries, she didn't build an empire. She built a test. And maybe, just maybe, I passed. Before you go, if this story stirred something in you, drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. It's more than engagement. It's how we stay connected in a world that thrives on hidden threads. And remember, there's always a quiz at the end. Be the first to answer. Don't let someone else steal your spotlight. Make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because here at Fiction Echoes, we don't just tell stories, we pull back the veil. Until next time. Quiz. How many times did you hear the name Andrew in this story?